I'm really bad at telling stories that aren't mine, so I apologize if there is some errors in the script. It's my point of view, you can think otherwise about the movie, and I still hope you will enjoy the video. I've seen a few films that have left me a lasting impression on the recent years. Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer is one of them. I was struck by the direction and the actors' performances, which didn't give me a momentary respite throughout the 3-hour film. And more recently, I watched Dune Part 2. And dear Lord, I loved it in every single way. I watched it with as much admiration and wide-eyed wonder as the first time I saw the Uruk-hai charge at Helm's Deep in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. I just felt like I was meeting a long-awaited prophet who gave me an experience I had been yearning for years. I watched many films in my lifetime, but none have left me as deeply marked, as filled with wonder and emotions at the end of it. Denis Villeneuve has clearly revolutionized the science fiction genre, transforming it into a new form of art, uniquely his own. You may not have experienced it in the same way, but I certainly felt something profound while watching Blade Runner 2049, not only because of the great performance of Ryan Gosling, but also thanks to Denis behind it. I expected some things watching Dune Part 1, but it was never near Dune Part 2. This movie intensified that feeling in every single way it could be intensified. The last time a film moved me so deeply with the scale of the frame was with Lawrence of Arabia or The Lord of the Rings. The grandeur of the world, the magnitude of the conflict, the complexity of the plot, and the overall scale of the film all contribute to a profound cinematic experience. Watching Dune Part 2, one can finally understand what 2024 science fiction should look like in cinema. Villeneuve and Greig Fraser have created an absolute masterpiece, forcing us into what I personally think is a historic event like we will experience once in our lifetime. I mean, I wasn't there for Star Wars or The Lord of the Rings, but I'm here for Dune. In writing about this film, I inevitably think of Christopher Nolan. I think about how he managed to convey so much meaning with images and scenes of unimaginable scope. He doesn't just create beautiful films, he highlights the strength of his scripts behind it. Watching Dune Part 2 propelled me out of my cinema seat, disrupting my comfortable conception of films, their creation and the messages hidden behind each frame. I now see that there is much more to discover, with 1,000 words concealed behind Villeneuve's cinematography. Just as Peter Jackson laid the foundation for decades of fantasy films, Villeneuve has undoubtedly established new standards for science fiction. Villeneuve's work is not just a visual spectacle, it's a profound experience that redefined what science fiction can achieve on the big screen. His vision has set a new standard, and the impact of Dune will undoubtedly influence the genre for years to come. Almost all the movie takes place on the home planet of the Fremen, with which we are introduced in the first movie, Arrakis, and this choice to build the movie on the planet almost exclusively gives Villeneuve and Fraser an opportunity to display a level of world building previously unseen. You think I'm going too far? When was the last time you were so deeply involved, so struck and impressed by a fictional environment that was as realistic as Dune, Star Wars maybe, or The Lord of the Rings? Well, those movies came out more than 20 years ago. Dune Part 2 is just a technical miracle, regardless of the year and technology available. Watching this movie is like watching the most beautiful relationship between grandiose shots showing the scale of a palace, a city, the desert, or a spacecraft, and shots of smaller settings. As I said earlier, Villeneuve is able to convey messages with the frames without shouting it in our ears, and that's what makes the movie so satisfying to watch. For example, we immediately grasp the enormity of the desert when we see Shai Hulud emerge from the sands to devour the spice harvester. The scale is one thing. Now, how the scale is portrayed is another. In Dune Part 1, the vastness of the desert is frightening, hostile, portrayed as dangerous and only habited by a certain group of people. At the beginning of Part 2 as well, the colors used for it are beige, grey, white. Then, as the film progresses and we, like Paul, fall in love with the desert and its ways of life, we realize that the beauty of the desert indeed exists when the color of the image changes to yellow, orange, very warm colors, depicting the romance between Chani and Paul. The night in the desert is less frightening when accompanied by the two protagonists dancing. And by the way, it's not the first time Villeneuve is using colors to send messages to the audience. The creation of a cinematic masterpiece requires not only the beauty of the image, but also the meaning behind it. And behind the sandy plains of Arrakis lies a message, a story of revolution that shakes my perception of art. This story is meant to be lived, not just watched. Cultures, religions, technology, and politics all intertwine. The close-ups on the faces of Fremen warriors, of inhabitants, of Chinese evolving love throughout the film for Paul. This is how science fiction films are meant to be made. The connection with the only species that is our own is the most important. Sadness, fear, and joy must be emotion we fully feel through the screen, as expertly done in Dune Part 2. I understand some people didn't like Part 1, calling it half a movie and overall just being way too long, but personally I love it. It's just the kind of movie that makes me dream. I do agree on one thing though, Paul Atreides is not interesting at all. I totally understand the stakes and everything around him, but I just think the Part 1 doesn't give Paul enough time to evolve into what he is supposed to be. On the contrary, in Part 2, he finally takes the screen and is absolutely marvelous doing it. Paul's character works so much in Dune because he's so human, because he loves and protects. As the plot unfolds before our eyes and we hope for alternative solutions, we know deep down that Paul will have to make the sacrifices demanded of him. And I'll be honest, I don't like Timothée Chalamet that much. His films are just not my type. Now, with the directing and help of Villeneuve, he finally gets the attention he deserves in my journey with cinema. He is a great actor, and the movie would certainly not have been as impactful as it is without his acting. I think the same of Zendaya, by the way. I liked Euphoria, but still thought she could be part of a bigger role with bigger stakes, and she did not miss on this one either. But how can I talk about Dune's cast without mentioning Austin Butler? He's just the best. He really knows how to use his voice to show the audience an impactful antagonist. Without looking funny or stupid, he really is one of the best actors on this movie, by far. That's all for me and Dune Part 2. My obsession for this film isn't pretentious. I'm simply enchanted to be able to experience this at such a young age in my life. The relationship between Chani and Paul is beautiful yet devastating, very well exploited by Villeneuve to deepen our connection to the characters. Every aspect of this film leaves a lasting impact, and I'll be forever grateful to have the opportunity to experience this in a theater.